They say your military service means nothing here. Colonel, that's the first thing Carolyn Peterson, our beloved HOA president, spit out the morning my wife came home from 8 months at sea. You'd think after serving her country, Eve would get a parade, a day off from the world's pettiness, maybe just one moment to breathe as a hero. Nope. Instead, she got slapped with a $75 fine because my welcome home sign was 4 inches too tall. I'm telling you, that sign, hand-painted in red, white, and blue, had barely been up 5 minutes before Carolyn came strutting across our front yard, tape measure in one hand and a clipboard in the other, looking like she ran the Navy herself. I remember thinking, you have no idea what you've just started, lady. That morning, the house was spotless, every surface gleaming. I'd been counting down the days with more anticipation than our wedding. I'm talking flowers on the table, her favorite candle burning, and that sign, God, I was proud of that sign. Our neighbors had been checking in for weeks, dropping by to ask when Eve would be home. Even Mrs. Patterson from across the street was glued to her window, waiting for the Navy car. It felt like the entire street was rooting for her return. When that black sedan pulled up at 11:30, I thought my heart might actually explode. Eve stepped out in full uniform, medals shining, posture straight as an arrow. She caught my eye, dropped her duffel, and ran into my arms. We both broke down, just holding each other on the front lawn like the world had finally set itself right. Folks came out on their porches, waving and cheering. For a minute, I actually believed in the American dream, you know? But before we could even breathe, there was Carolyn, marching over like she owned the block. She didn't even say hello. Just started measuring the sign and mumbling about community standards. Then she locked eyes with Eve's uniform and got this look, like she smelled something bad. "This isn't a military base, Colonel," she said, making a show of those air quotes. "Here, the only authority I recognize is the HOA." I felt my fist clench, but Eve stayed cool, just nodded and told her we'd fix the sign. But in her eyes, I saw it. She was already cataloging this woman, noting every tell, every weakness. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. For a couple days, things were quiet. Then, early one morning, Carolyn came back, dragging an official-looking HOA inspector. "Your mailbox is 2.1 inches over the sidewalk easement," she declared. Another $75 fine, handed over with a smirk. Eve stepped outside mid-workout, still breathing hard, but carried herself with that military presence that turns heads, even in sweatpants. "Trust you'll handle this with the same detail you showed overseas, Colonel?" Carolyn cooed. It was like she wanted a fight, or maybe just proof that the stories about military folks being too rigid, too damaged, were true. It became a pattern. Carolyn showed up after every grocery run, after every little moment of peace. "Your bumper is 3 inches past the driveway line," she'd say, camera in hand. "Porch light is too bright. That's $200. Every time, Eve would log the incident, document the threat, but I saw it wearing her down. Even Sarah next door started hiding behind her curtains, peeking out but never saying a word. You could feel the fear growing. Carolyn had turned the neighborhood into her own little dictatorship. 12 days in, a letter from a law firm landed on our doorstep, threats of a lien on our home if we didn't pay up. That was Eve's breaking point. She went into the garage and started hammering her punching bag, yelling, 15 years defending this country, and I get bullied in my own home. I'd never seen her like that. Later, she sat on the floor, tears in her eyes, whispering, "Maybe I really don't belong here anymore." The next morning, Sarah finally knocked, hands shaking, and handed Eve a fat folder, 2 years of documentation. Turns out, Carolyn had destroyed 3 families before us, all military. Daily fines, made-up violations, personal attacks. She'd even targeted a Navy commander's daughter, calling the school and CPS on fake charges. Her vendetta was personal. Military people think they're above civilian authority, and I need to remind them their uniforms mean nothing. That's what she told Sarah. The anger in Eve's eyes changed. I saw the old commander coming back, organizing evidence, preparing for battle. Eve decided on a direct approach. She put on her full dress uniform, medals and all, and marched straight to Carolyn's door. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm Colonel Evelyn Reed, United States Navy. This harassment ends now." Carolyn just smiled, icy and unblinking, and fired back, "You know, I've researched what deployment stress does to officers. Anger, paranoia, difficulty with civilian authority. She threatened to call the military, ruin Eve's career with a single phone call. That's when I realized this wasn't some cranky old lady. This was someone who'd weaponized the system. The next day, Carolyn started a whisper campaign, visiting neighbors, expressing concern about Eve's mental health. Within 2 days, she had folks questioning whether our hero was a threat. She started baiting Eve on her morning jogs, cameras rolling. "Still running away from your problems, Colonel?" She'd sneer. Eve kept her cool, but you could see the stress building. It all came to a head when police showed up, called by Carolyn for a domestic disturbance. They found Eve in the garage, working the heavy bag, sweat pouring down her face. Carolyn was ready, photos, audio, witness statements all painting Eve as unstable. But Eve stood tall, saluted, and said, "Sergeant, I'm Colonel Reed, active duty Navy. Verify my record before you judge." The cop's whole demeanor changed. Turns out, he was retired Army, too. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. He took our evidence, read Sarah's testimony, and saw right through Carolyn's act. Cornered, Carolyn started shrieking about Eve's supposed breakdowns, even accused us of fabricating evidence. But the audio recordings, the financial records Sarah found, HOA funds spent on legal bills, surveillance gear, were damning. "Marcus," the sergeant, said, "Mrs. Peterson, filing false reports is a criminal offense." The HOA board called an emergency meeting, fired Carolyn on the spot, and launched a full audit. Neighbors poured out with stories of their own, how they'd lived in fear, how they'd wanted to welcome Eve but were too scared of retaliation. Sarah was elected interim president, reversed all Carolyn's fines, and promised real oversight. Carolyn? She was arrested, charged with fraud, harassment, misuse of HOA funds, and banned for life from HOA boards. The community threw Eve the welcome home she deserved, complete with veterans, neighbors, even news cameras. For the first time, you could feel peace settle over the block. Eve looked out at the flag in our yard and said, "It's not the medals or ceremonies I missed. It's just this, being home, knowing good people don't have to be afraid of small tyrants." Eventually, even the house Carolyn once ruled got new owners, a military family, just like us. As the sun set, Eve watched them move in and said, "Turns out some ranks matter everywhere. But real respect comes from standing up for what's right." So here's my question for you. Does service mean something in your community? Or have you met your own Carolyn? Ever stood up to a bully in your neighborhood? Drop your stories below, and let's talk about what real justice should look like. Because, believe me, this stuff isn't made up. Real people are just this wild. If you want more stories that prove it, hit that bell so you don't miss the next episode.